So you work that regular 9 to 5 to make money, to buy the things you need and the things you want. But what if you could make your money work for you? I didn't realize this until much later in life that when you actually start putting money into banks, when you put money into an investment account, you can actually start making your money really work for you. So what exactly does this mean? Traditional job, you work 9 to 5, you're working 40 hours a week, you get paid X amount of money, regardless of how much effort you really do put in a job. And let's be honest, we're not putting 100% effort into the job every single day, all day. The harder you work, chances are you're still going to make that exact same hourly wage. But that is not true when it comes to making your money work for you. The first one we look at is building a budget. Now, there's not a video that we don't talk about this. Building a budget financially technically doesn't make your money work for you, but it gives you the ability to track where your money is going, what it's going to be used for, and this can free up anything that you have in excess or if you're overspending in a specific category. When you think of really 3 core benefits that we look in budgeting, number 1, creating a clear picture of the financial situation, looking at your short-term, long-term needs. If you're losing money, you have to really make it a point to see where you're misspending or where you're overspending, because if you're running every single month in the red, chances are you're not going to have the ability for your money to work for you. And then plan out what exactly you want to do in the future. If it's traveling, if it's a wedding, if it's something that you can really plan for, you can budget for, you can build it in there. And when it comes to budget, I'm not saying it has to be a super restrictive lifestyle. That is what a lot of people think when they hear the word budgeting. If it fits in the budget, absolutely do it. If you love to go out and eat, if you like to go to the movies, if you like taking vacation, if it works in the budget, absolutely put it in the budget. Now, number 2, earning interest on your cash. This is where we talk about high yield savings accounts. I have mine personally through M1 Finance. Even when you start thinking of that 3 to 6 months in that emergency fund, where are you storing it at? For a majority of people, roughly about 38%, they are storing it in traditional financial institutions. They are getting paid about a 0.3%, which is crazy, meaning that everything you have in that emergency fund is getting eaten up by inflation year over year, and the money you have in there will not have the same buying power that it does have in the future. This is the reason you have to get some sort of return. If you're sitting on 3 to 6 months, let's say $20,000, $30,000, depending on your spending pattern, that is a pretty good chunk of change you're going to be getting on a monthly basis with a high yield savings account. Now, very true to this, high yield savings accounts make a big difference when you're parking money. It doesn't mean that you can't tie it into short-term CDs, and that's what some people are doing. However, looking at the rates right now, when it comes to those short-term CDs, unfortunately, they're paying about 4.2, 4.3. Getting the 4% in that high yield savings really does make a big difference. And also, a majority of the high yield savings, make sure they are insured. You don't want to lose the emergency fund. You don't want to lose money at all. If by chance your financial institution does go ahead and lose money or go bankrupt or get into a financial crisis, you want to make sure your money is secured. Now, very similar to those high yield savings, we do look at the money market. So this again can have a much higher rate. It can be NCUA or FDIC insured. It's a little bit different than what we see with a high yield savings account, because money market accounts are typically a little bit of a higher interest rate if they do offer them, and most of them do have a check writing capability or more of a debit capability versus having just the ability to save and only save within these accounts. Now, a lot of these do have minimums, so you do have to be careful. You don't want to be hit with fees when you're trying to save money into these accounts. Then we start getting into CDs. This again is a little bit expanding when we start looking at certificates of deposit. They are FDIC or NCUA insured. This is far less liquid. So if you're looking at a CD, and even here rates are running again about 4 to 4.5%. When you start looking at a term, it could be 6 months, 12 months, 9 months, 18 months. There are so many different terms when it comes to CDs, but this puts your money to work. If you're beating out inflation in its entirety, you are actually earning money by putting money into a CD. And of course, a lot of people do love the CD options because they are guaranteed returns. You're not going to see the fluctuation in the market. You're not going to see the up days, the down days. If you cannot emotionally stomach it, if you cannot handle seeing the balance of your portfolio drop 5, 10%, going up 5 or 10%, this is where getting the guaranteed return in CDs really does make a big difference. Now, you also have to look, because right now, a majority of short-term money, if you're looking to do CDs, is paying a lot higher than we see traditionally with like a 3, a 4, or 5 year CD. that make sure you know the rate, make sure you know the terms, and also make sure 100% that you know the penalty. If you are taking money, if you do have to break that CD, what is the penalty that is going to be owed to the financial institution? Because again, we want to stay away from fees. We want to make sure you're not getting hit with a lot of costs. Now, when we start looking at bigger picture, investing in the stock market, this is really the most powerful, probably one of the absolute most powerful ways to grow your portfolio. High yield savings accounts, those CDs we talked about, not really going to have the growth factor that we want to see. But when you start looking at a financial institution, or when you start looking at the stock market in general, when you're looking at just something like the S&P 500, yielding roughly a 10% return year over year. So you're double, over double what we're seeing in those high yield savings and of course those CD accounts by just putting money in the stock market. Now, this does come with knowing and there possibly being a greater risk. Investment accounts typically are not insured against a broker. They have some coverage in there, but usually when you start looking at investing poorly, that ultimately falls on you. If you're putting all your money into cryptocurrency and the market bottoms out, guess what? That money is gone, trying to recoup whatever you have, ultimately determining how you're building this portfolio, what kind of risk you're willing to take, what kind of liquidity you do have in there, and making sure that there's a couple different vehicles. First one, of course, the taxable brokerage accounts. You pay after tax, you put money in there. But also when you start looking at investment accounts, retirement accounts, we're talking 401ks, we're talking HSAs, we're talking IRAs. There are a lot of different investment vehicles that can be used in there in the entirety. Now, when we start panning out a little bit, when it comes to a portfolio, investing in real estate. Now, when it comes to real estate, me personally, I choose not to invest into physical real estate itself. I don't want to be a landlord. I don't want to have tenants. I don't want that monthly income, which I know it is very nice to have, but overall, I don't want, the taxes. I don't want the headache. I don't want the, fixing up a place, property rental, having tenants. Now, another way that you can actually invest in real estate in a few platforms such as Fundrise, you can go ahead and invest. You can invest in specific projects. They even have venture capital, a couple other things, but you can also go in there and just buy REITs. Now, REITs are real estate investment trusts. So what you're putting is this is kind of how they're bundling investment portfolios. So you have a company that owns a bunch of, let's say, residential housing. They have a REIT that the company does own, or it is within a bunch of different companies that kind of do the same thing. So you have to make sure you do your research in this manner, making sure you know exactly what you're investing in. And if it is residential, if it's commercial, if it's industrial, there are a lot of different things from even buying cell towers to having billboards. It's kind of crazy when it comes to what you can invest in. And again, knowing exactly what you're investing in. This is the same for art. Now, when we start thinking of Masterworks, now I don't have any sponsors, don't have any affiliation with them, but when you start looking at years ago in alternative assets, you could never invest in them. I couldn't invest in them. I do not have millions of dollars to buy a piece of artwork, nor can I store it. Majority of you guys probably the exact same. It used to be really locked behind the ultra wealthy or people who could afford it. Thanks to technology, thanks to specialization, they have fractional shares where you can actually invest in art. And looking in the returns, they are pretty decent. Now, we've seen this with a couple other sites that have done it with other things that are outside of art. We've seen it with trading cards. We've seen it for pretty much anything that has a pretty solid value that you can kind of set it down to and know exactly what you're buying based on the value. So if they sell that asset, you do get paid in return. The next one we look at is high interest debt. Now, when it comes to high interest debt, there really isn't a place that you are going to get a better guaranteed return. Now, when it comes to high interest debt, we call and really focus on making you money. So when you think of how do I make my money work for me, which is exactly what we're looking at. If you have the ability to eliminate debt, the more debt you can eliminate, the more you're paying down those credit cards, the more money you get to keep in your pocket. That is something that is kind of crazy. And the biggest part that I did and the biggest really eye-opening experience that I had with this is taking all of your loans. So you're looking at your mortgage, you're looking at home equities, student loans, you're looking at auto loans, everything that you have, credit card debt, every single debt you have, tallying up exactly how much interest you're paying for all of those on a monthly basis, and then kind of equating that into your hourly wage. So if you're a person making $25 an hour, let's say you got, $2,500 that you're putting out every single month, and a big chunk of that, about $800, is going into interest, which again is pretty feasible for a majority of people. How many hours do you have to work to pay that $800 in interest on a monthly basis? Which is kind of crazy. So you're literally trading time in your life for the assets that you have or the debt that you might be carrying for 3, 5, 10, 20 years. It is kind of crazy. And also, the final one I'm going to leave you with is automating your finances. Putting these on automatic will make your money work for you. You ensure you never miss a bill. You don't get late fees. Also, it's not going to have late fees or even late payments. That could definitely affect your credit score. And also making sure putting it on autopilot. A lot of places do offer discounts. I know through Xfinity, through Verizon, a couple ones, they are giving you a discount for setting up those automatic payments. Just make sure if it is anything that is variable, and I really stress this, when it comes to something like your utility bill, DT, Consumers Energy, a few of the utility bills, they can vary greatly when it comes to what you're getting charged on a monthly basis. You might not be ready for, a $200, $300, $400 bill to come out in the winter, knowing exactly how much you're paying, because I don't want you to overdraw the checking account. I do not want you to get hit with fees in any manner, but it does make a big difference when you're doing this. Now, how do I stop working for money, making it work for me? Some definite good tips in there. The biggest one that I have and the biggest one that I utilize is the investment strategy. When I start looking, I am putting money into my 401k. I am putting money into the HSA. I am also putting money into a taxable brokerage account. The combination of all those is going to get to a point where I want to build such a large nest egg that I actually have the ability to go in there and pull money out, pull the dividends out on a monthly basis as a supplement to Social Security and not touch the nest egg. That is an old expression that I've heard from Dave Ramsey, and I'm sure it goes a lot further back than that, is when you start looking at the golden goose, you never touch the golden goose. You just take the eggs that are laid on a regular basis, which does make sense. Now, when it comes to passive income, you could also look at a ton of different things with really the internet. Guys, anything, including YouTube, making financial content, doing gaming, anything that you can bring in some extra money, because you really have one of two options. Either one, you can earn some extra income, you can earn some extra money, work some extra hours, or two, you can lower your expenses, lower those liabilities, giving you bucket three, which is the money that you have to build assets and the money that you do have to invest. All right, guys, so that's going to do it for today's video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. And as always, thank you guys for watching.